I'm going to talk through the structural aspects of the new strategy and then hand over to Kay Michael, who was an original initiator of the movement, to talk about the principles of the movement, its activities, actions, and comms. Okay. So, Culture Declares is a community of cultural sector individuals and organisations who have declared a climate and ecological emergency. In this document, we'll urge you to organise a network within cohorts of interest, and we'll run through what is Culture Declares, the story so far, and how you can get involved. Sorry, my screen keeps jumping about. So, what is Culture Declares? Culture Declares launched as the first professional sector to declare a climate and ecological emergency in April 2019. The movement is growing. Within 1 year, we have over 1,000 arts and cultural organisations and individuals who've declared an emergency and pledged to take action. So this is over to Kay.
Thanks, Victoria. So yeah, as Victoria says, we've had up to 1,000 declarers. Maybe some of you are one of those declarers, but the breadth is quite incredible, from the Royal Court to Sadler's Wells, Home in Manchester, the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, Anthony Gormley, Brian Eno, and the Museums Association, just to name a few. And we're organised around the following. So our vision is that the UK cultural sector declares and takes action on the climate and ecological emergency. That action and mission being to tell the truth, to take action and seek justice in the face of the emergency. And our values are to be an inclusive, diverse and collaborative community of cultural sector declarers. Now that mission that is outlined there, and some of it you heard Lucy speak at the beginning of the session, is articulated in our declaration text. And as a declarer, you're invited to use that declaration text or adapt it as part of your announcement, your public declaration of recognising that we are in a climate and ecological emergency. Next slide, please. So why declare a climate and ecological emergency? Well, there's the environmental context. Humanity faces the combined catastrophes of climate change and a mass extinction of vital biodiversity. These impacts will affect the most vulnerable and least responsible first. In October 2018, the publication of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's special report called for unprecedented changes within 12 years to keep global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees. We are in the final decade, you might say, for action.
So why declare? Part of a wider movement. The declaration movement started with climate mobilisation in the US and Australia and is now promoted by Extinction Rebellion, the Sunrise Movement, School Strike for Climate, with local authorities and other sectors declaring worldwide. A declaration is a public commitment to act. It is the first step in a wider strategy for climate justice and social change.
Next slide. There's also a role that culture has to play in declaring. Culture has the power to bring people together, disrupt the status quo, and imagine new possibilities, tapping into intrinsic values of connection, story, meaning, and place. Culture is seen broadly as the arts, design, museums, heritage, archives and libraries, creative industries, education, performance, well-being, and participatory practice. We're a broad umbrella. So we've been active, Culture Declares as a network's been active for over a year now. We've initiated a wealth of actions in the real and virtual world. Some of you have been a part of those or may be aware of them. But here we've got a bit of a timeline of some key events, some highlights, our rather fabulous horse-led processional launch across Waterloo Bridge and along South Bank, stopping by at the National Theatre and Shakespeare's Globe and the Tate, for example. In July, we then gathered 300 cultural practitioners and organisations at the Roundhouse for an assembly where we really questioned the role of the arts in the face of the emergency. Many a connection were made. In September, we collaborated with the newly founded sister declarer movements, Music Declares Emergency and Architects Declare Emergency, and there are now, in fact, many more such sister declarer movements. And at the School Strike for Climate, we brought speakers together for a rally for the imagination, responding to Caroline Lucas's call that artists lead the way where politics has failed. In November, the Letters to the Earth campaign, which was initiated back in April, had a book launch with over 1,000 letters received worldwide in response to the emergency. In February this year, we co-produced Extinction Underground at the Volts Festival, which declared at that event, and we had over 80 artists and activists collaborating. And as you know, this April, this event that we're speaking at today is part of the Offer, a weekly online program in response to COVID, bringing the network together. So these are just examples of the kind of activities that have been done so far, and that the invitation is to keep building on them and do more.
So how you can get involved. You can register your declaration via the Culture Declares website, announce your declaration using the online toolkit, connect with our social media at Declaration Actions via our newsletter, start a local Culture Declares hub within your area, or start a network within your country. And in addition now, you can join one of our new working groups to connect with other declarers and start making a change. So as part of the new structure, there are 3 working groups for the Culture Declares. Wherever you may be, you can join them and get active within them. They're going to meet regularly. They'll be self-directed and self-organising. The 3 groups are strategic change making, influences, lobbies and advocates political and policy change and environmental justice for all. There's events, it's physical and digital interventions to bring declarers together, share knowledge, co-create and bring about change. They will rebel and agitate the status quo where necessary. Communications, so this will amplify stories, activities and news of the movement as a whole and connect wider movement beyond the Culture Declares. So the working groups are designed for you to bring your ideas, skills and passions. They're a place to connect with others and to be supported to action. The groups will be hosted online via Zoom on a regular basis. A coordinated group who's your first point of contact and who'll be responsible for organising meetings. The role of the coordinator will be on rotation, with a new member of the group taking the role every 3 months.
So this diagram just goes some way to articulate the circular structure of Culture Declares Emergency. As Victoria's described, we've got these 3 working groups that are interconnected, and they will be communicating and coordinating with each other whilst being spaces to gravitate towards where the energy might be for a certain action that wants to be arranged, or a certain campaign for strategic making, or a certain story that wants to be amplified. And for example, within those working groups, there may be smaller subgroups that form to organise around a particular event within actions and events, or a particular campaign, for example. And the Culture Declares CIC, which Victoria will go on to explain, really sits at the heart of this, activating and communicating with all those 3 circles. And outside of and beyond the Culture Declares network of all of the connected outer circles, such as the local Culture Declare hub. So some of you may be aware of Kirklees declares emergency, and we'd love to see a Brighton declares emergency, and Culture Declares Emergency, or Bristol Culture Declares Emergency, for example. And also international hubs are beginning to exist too. So we have a Culture Declares Emergency in New York and in Spain. And so we want to be activating more of those and connecting with more, as well as keeping connected with the wider climate movement, other sister declare initiatives such as Music Declares, Health Declares, Business Declares, and collaborate together for strategic change. So next slide, please.
Yeah, companies. It's important here to recognise the functionary role that this plays, that it's a means to an end rather than an end to form a bank account and make certain funding applications that we wouldn't be able to do without a legal entity. So it's a form of limited, it's primarily to benefit a community or to pursue a social purpose. It's the vehicle that was Culture Declares to achieve its aims, as I said. CIC needs members to guide the organisation. All declarers active within the working groups or local groups are able to become CIC members if they wish. The CIC directors who will for the statutory obligations for the colours, these will be representatives of the working groups and voted in by them, and the directors will support the national coordinator. CIC members will agree on a constitution to include terms allowing for turnover and a diversity of directors. Alongside the constitution will be a strategy for fundraising to help resource communications and coordination and the needs identified by the working groups. You can join the working groups by signing up via Zoom to the following meetings. I think that link's going to be available on chat, and we'll also make sure we circulate it via our newsletters after this meeting, and it will be available on the website too. So the first meeting, the strategic change making, will be on Tuesday the 23rd between 9 and 10:30 a.m. Communications on Wednesday the 24th, same time. Actions and events on Thursday the 25th at the same time. And if you need any more information on that, you can email me at culturedeclares@gmail.com.
Thanks, Victoria. And just to add to this, that we recognise that not everyone in this room may well be a declarer of climate and ecological emergency yet, whether you're an organisation or you represent an organisation or whether you are an individual. So we recognise that there is a process that often that goes hand in hand with declaring, that you may need to take this to your organisation, to your boards, or to those that you work with. And so all that support is on the Culture Declares website, including the declaration text that we've referred to as well, that is adaptable. And in that text are those pledges to action, to tell the truth, to take action, and to work for justice. And what we've presented here today is really just the invitation of how you can specifically get involved to take action according to where your energy and where your interests and where your passions and skills may be for change making. And I just want to, we will have a Q&A session towards the end of this, but I just want to acknowledge Deborah's point about joined up thinking. Oh no, sorry, there's a point that Deborah's put in the chat that I just want to refer to, about referring to other such activity or interests that declarers might have, and forming groups around that. So around like special interests that groups can be created to be activated on, and that's absolutely the invitation too. What we've presented here is just a way that everything can be coordinated and can communicate with each other, so as a movement we continue to grow and are working towards the same common goal, and we're aware of what we're all doing. But thank you, I hope that that makes sense. We will be welcoming questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Kay. And obviously that document is available to be able to look at after this gathering today. Now, it's not really possible to work with each other in theory through sort of abstract plans and strategies and diagrams. It's only really possible to work with each other in practice. And as these three working groups that Kay and Victoria have outlined give us the main sort of traction for Culture Declares Emergency going forward with you and with others, we're now going to hear from Polly Gifford, Kay Michael and Heather Ackroyd in turn, who are, for the next 3 months, acting as the coordinators of those three working groups. So we're going to hear first from Polly on behalf of the Strategic Change-Making Group, simply to bring alive and to give a bit of sort of reality to how these working groups could work and how any one of you might be interested to join them or in time set one up where you are. So Polly, would you like to begin with a sense of what a strategic change-making group might be looking at? Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Hi, everybody. I think for me, this is the place where we make connections and new alliances. It's a place to refine our arguments and to think about how we use them strategically to influence, to advocate, and to lobby for political and policy change. Since being involved in Culture Declares, I've often been amazed at how the mycelial web of connections reaches out and enables us to be much greater than the sum of our parts. I mean, some examples from the last year of the kind of thing this working group might lead on are the letter to Arts Council England responding to their new 10-year strategy, supporting the startup of other declarer groups like Health Declares and Music Declares and collaborating with them on common goals, working in collaboration with Julie's Bicycle, who are a hugely supportive and important partner, advocating to different cultural players and influencers to encourage their declarations and support, and a very key example is Tate. Also engaging with external partners and advisors such as Farhana Yamin, who many of you will have heard speak, who can link us into global conversations and really take us out of our immediate environments. And then also responding to new crises such as coronavirus, where we put out a statement that tried to make the very clear connection with climate and ecological emergency. So some of the things and the challenges I think we might be grappling with earlier on or delving into are responding to the Black Lives Matter context, and again, making that connection with climate justice, which I think is so fundamental. Connecting the movement of movements. There's an increasing number of declarer groups and others within and beyond the cultural sector, and how do we keep connected so that we can have the greatest impact? And then, as Lucy mentioned at the beginning, with COP26 being postponed, what do we do with the additional time to position ourselves and our movement to have the greatest impact, and what are some of those key messages we want to communicate, and how should we do that? So that's some of the stuff we might kick off talking about. But as has been mentioned, the agenda will be very much set by the people who come together. I think the working groups are a space to say what if or what else, and to connect our ideas and to engage with others. So we'll start off meeting fortnightly to communicate and to organise. And then, as Kay has already mentioned, if there are specific campaigns or specific areas of interest, we can adjust how we work and meet to facilitate those. So it's a very open forum. I'm very excited to see what conversations come out of it. We get the Tuesday morning slot, so Tuesday morning, 23rd of June at 9 o'clock. And I very much look forward to speaking to some of you there. Back to you, Lucy.
Thank you, Polly. And now we move to the Wednesday morning, which will be a meeting held fortnightly, a working group on communications. And Kay Michael is, for the next 3 months, the coordinator of this. So Kay, would you like to give us a sense of what this working group could be exploring and moving forward?
Thanks, Lucy. Yes, so the communications working group is going to be slightly different to the other two, in that it, by its nature, will require slightly more fixed roles and specific skill sets or interests. So just as a bit of an overview, if you're a wizard on social media and you love running Twitter, Facebook and Instagram accounts specific to climate and the arts, then we want to hear from you. If you're a brilliant and dynamic graphic designer, filmmaker, photographer, editor, we want to hear from you. If you've got a knack for words and copywriting, if you can make snazzy presentation documents like the one you've just seen, if you're interested in connecting to more communities outside of the Culture Declares movement and even internationally, perhaps on an advocacy level, as well as just on a promotional level of what the movement is doing. If you've got those necessary and technical website development skills to take Culture Declares to the next level, we want to hear from you. If you love capturing stories, then we want to collect all the stories of action that the Culture Declares movement is taking, and we want to have a newsletter team that can regularly create dynamic content for the movement to be engaged with. So they're just an example of the things that I know off the top of my head from having been kind of with my thumbs connected to the social media accounts the past few years, knowing, okay, I think we could do with some of this and that. I'd really love to see those of you that, whether you have those specific professional skills or not. I never thought I'd be doing this kind of work, but here I am. Even if you're a novice, if you want to learn and you want to work with others and you're quick on your feet, please join me for a first meeting.
Now I'm glad to introduce Heather Ackroyd to talk to us about actions and events, and that meeting will be on Thursday mornings fortnightly.
Yeah,
the first is June the 25th. Heather.
Lovely, thank you. Hello everyone. So this is really playing, I think, to your our communal skills and strengths. You know, this is where, you know, we can sort of just pull together all of those extraordinary imaginations and abilities that we have. So Kay discussed some of actions and events that have already happened to date. So just to go over it again, just briefly, back in April the 3rd, the processional disruptive launch with the horse. 100 people contributed on the day to making that happen. And there was direct support from Extinction Rebellion. And then a week later, the Letters to the Earth readings of up to 1,000 letters received across 52 venues worldwide on a day of joint action on April the 12th, 2019. In July, we had over 300 people meeting for an assembly at the Roundhouse, convening, giving open space for dialogue, and we could also share provocations and questions about how we could move forward, kind of find a collective energy, interact with each other. The Rally for the Imagination happened at the Youth Strike with guest speakers. There were various activities in creative direct action during the rebellion, such as Anne-Marie Culhane's wonderful group performance with everybody with their moustaches and sort of doing the marshalling around stopping flying. And then in February this year, Extinction Underground took to a very wild, disruptive and glorious night at the Vaults, which was also part of the Vaults Declaration. So we've also had a series of community events. Think and Do have been happening in Camden. That's sort of been organized through Farhana Yamin and Kelly Paulin, and many other hands there have made that happen. Will emerge again when we come through lockdown. Kirk Lees also did a pop-up, Culture Declares Emergency, shop for a week. That was very far-reaching and very kind of well received. And as you know, today is the 10th day of the offer, our 10th offering, and going forward, it'll be bi-weekly going into July and onwards. And again, we put the invite out to you. This is a platform for you to come forward and say, I have this idea, we have this idea, and to start to share that as well. So, you know, this is what we'll be looking at, and hopefully in the near future, we're just starting communications with a film cooperative, Together Films, to start to show a series of films. I want to start to show the 2040 film, which I've yet to see, which is meant to be very life enhancing and shows how it can be done when we really, really do what we all need that we have to do. That almost made sense. Okay, thanks very much. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you, Heather. And Pippa has quite rightly said, can you put the dates and times for each group in the chat, please, as I am slightly confused, but I promise you all there is no need to be confused, and we will put all those together so that that is recorded for you all. And again, that will go out in a newsletter, and there is a link here which gives you the chance to sign up to any of these 3 introductory meetings that Polly, Kay and Heather have outlined. And the plan is that initially those meetings would be every fortnight. And, you know, this is us just thinking, well, what could work and how could it work? And does any of this make sense? So with that in mind, we are going to go into our second round of breakout groups, when you'll find yourself with 2 or 3 others. And it's a chance for you, between you, really just to rehearse, you know, how has this landed with you? Does it make sense? Could you imagine yourself being stepping into one? I mean, could step into all 3, but this is about our energy and our interests. And also, I think, it's to note that sometimes we go on doing what we know we have particular skills in, but we would invite you to consider that this is also a chance to learn. And it could be that there's a group that offers you the chance to learn new skills, or to learn through cooperating and collaborating with others. So it could be that there's a group that doesn't immediately sort of sound like the group in which you naturally and instinctively are drawn to. It could be that one of the other groups gives you a chance to extend your skills and to be able to give and gain something that maybe for a while you've been thinking about wanting to do. So we have got a Q&A session later. So the chance for you to be able to, some good questions are coming up, but we will come back to those questions. We'll come back to the chance to kind of engage as a bigger group. But just for the moment, we wondered if in the breakout group, you could answer the question, or begin this question as a starting point, is that from what you've heard, can you imagine inhabiting one of these working groups? So I'm typing as I speak, which isn't always a very good idea, is it? From what you've heard, can you imagine inhabiting one of these 3 working groups? And if so, how? What ideas and skills do you have? If only we were all in a room together, but we're not. But we are in a kind of a room together. And I just had a very small suggestion to make, which could be helpful or not. But you have on your own face image or screen 3 dots, which allow you to rename yourself. And if you were minded to, just to put sort of predominantly where you may be based. Now, geographically, that could be, you could be working in a number of different places, but if you were able to just to sort of put before your name the place you were based, that gives us a sort of small sense of geography, just going through over the last 20 minutes or so of this meeting. We had thought we might do a poll to ask that question, but it's not possible to do that. But we would do that another time, and we could indeed do that when we get going on the meeting. So we've now got sort of 15 minutes, which allows us to talk to each other and to ask questions. So this is a chance really for myself and Kay and Polly and Heather and Victoria, those of us who've been doing a bit of talking, to be quiet, but to steer through what is coming up in some of the chats. Kay has asked if it would be possible to see what groups people are thinking of joining. We don't want to put people on the spot, but if people have made a bit of a decision there, I think that would be great to hear. If you want to add that, that would be great. We've got somebody saying I'd be interested in the comms group, and it's based in Plymouth. So just to kind of get that going, that would be great to hear from people. and we will make this into a visual on a Google map one day. That would be very helpful, because then that allows you to actually know who's literally down the road or around the corner when we get to kind of actually meet up together, face to face or chair to chair or whatever becomes possible. So I think this is a moment to ask anybody, and bear with us, is if you could use your reactions, which I think mostly gives you the chance to clap or do a thumbs up, which isn't that helpful, if you've got particular questions that you'd like to ask. So I'm going to suggest that you use the thumbs up if you have a direct question that you'd like to ask. It might be about clarification about what we set out this morning, or it might be something from some of the conversations that you've just had with a few others. But please feel welcome to pose those questions. And I'm going to ask Polly and the others just to kind of keep an eye on any of you that have got questions like that.
Some questions have already come through in the chat, but because we've got quite a stream of info going on in that chat, which can be good to keep going, if you've posted something in the chat and would like to vocalize that question or flag it up so we're aware of it, do raise your thumb. As Polly said, as Lucy said, you can press reactions in the bottom right of your screen and raise your thumb, and we'll come to you and invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Pippa.
Hi Lucy, thanks. Yeah, it just came up in our group in terms of what sort of commitment was being asked and whether it was to align with the organizer or what. So that would be good to know.
Shall I answer that? I mean, it's really, there's no requirements about commitment. It's really about what your energy and capacity leans towards and what your interests lean towards. Those meetings will be happening fortnightly. So the intention is that that's a holding space for people to regularly meet. If you can't meet every fortnight, then that's absolutely understandable. We all have other things going on, and this is all on a voluntary basis. I will say though that with the communications working group, there is a slight difference there, because I would hope that people will be able to take on specific roles, which will be fully mandated, such as people that may wish to manage a particular social media account. That will require a certain level of commitment that can also be shared with others, and that can be on a rotation basis. So like the coordinators of each group, we're only going to hold that role for 3 months before someone else steps in. So nothing is fixed in terms of, no person is fixed, but a role might become a fixed thing. And I just want to say also that I shared in the breakout room that I was in that you may have a strong idea that you want to bring to a working group, but you may not have the time to deliver it yourself. That's also great and fine. Bring all your ideas, drop those seeds into the working groups, and in true decentralized self-organizing power, if the energy is there for someone else to pick it up, it will happen. So I hope that answers the question.
Does that answer it, Pippa? Very exciting seeing these things coming up in chat. So anybody else? Polly, did you?
I just wanted to kind of we've heard a lot over the last hour. And I just really wanted to reiterate something that you set out right at the beginning, Lucy, but because some people joined us through the first few minutes might have missed, that the broader context we're in, and very specifically the Black Lives Matter movement, is absolutely central to how we want to move forward and how we respond to that. And I just really wanted to reiterate that. And that will be across all the groups, how we communicate, certainly within the strategic change-making groups, how we form alliances that can enable us to make a positive contribution. We are very aware that Culture Declares and the climate movement in general is not diverse enough. It does not have a wide enough range of voices represented. So what can we do to change that who can we form alliances with, who can we reach out to, with absolute humility to say we need to impact on that. And I just wanted to restate that because it was said at the beginning, but it needs to be said as often as is necessary, that is a real priority. Not just because of what's happened in the last few weeks. I think it's been a priority and an issue for the climate movement for some time. But it will certainly be very much at the top of the agenda I'd like to share with the strategic working group.
Thank you, Polly. Thank you for restating that. So a chance for anybody else to bring something in. Colin.
I just wanted to say that when our little breakout groups, one thing that came up was we talked about Black Lives Matter, and David said about that it proves that you can make history and history can be written right now. It felt very direct, but of course there's a huge amount of stuff behind that leads up to that moment. Of course there is, and tensions, etc. But often also what came up was that sometimes meetings and the Zoom fatigue setting in can mean that great intentions like this can sometimes hit a buffer where you end up with a kind of fatigue, and sometimes you feel like pulling back because there are no epoch moments. They're very rare. They don't come along very often, even though we're in a climate catastrophe at the moment as well. And I was just wondering if we can, does the Black Lives Matter events unfolding over the last couple of days particularly, does that help, or does it also make us realise that we are possibly struggling to make this an epoch moment and make sure the media and the public and the awareness is that's my question to the group, really. It feels like it could help, or it could actually create some kind of glass ceiling to ambition for this cause. Question to the group. Big one.
Do you mean, Colin, that we get sort of slightly held within a bubble, and that we don't
bubble,
find the... Sorry?
It's a bubble, yes. It's a bubble of our own creation is what I'm worried about, is that looking at the faces, including my own, we're not a very diverse group here on this Zoom call. That's not a criticism. It's just that with Black Lives Matter happening, and it creates, it burst, that bubble for them has burst, and it's released a huge amount of energy, and it's powerful, and it's moving now to create change. And it feels like the desire in this group is strong to make change, including my own. But it can be, if the structures are in place for meeting after meeting after meeting, you can end up with fatigue. So I just wanted to ask that question, if you're aware, to be aware of not letting meeting after meeting, subgroups within the subgroup start to create a kind of, I wanted to help, but I ended up lost in the information system of trying to help. That's my concern and question, really.
I think,
sorry, Polly.
Just what occurs to me in that is that's partly why we're doing what we're doing today, because I think we've had a year. This was all kicked off by a certain group of people because they had the will and the intention and the capacity to do it. New people came in, but we felt, okay, we need to burst this open again.
Yeah.
And I think the desire to offer a new structure and to really open up the conversation again is partly to stop that happening, because we found things had become a bit concentrated.
Yeah.
Despite our intentions. So we hope that by offering a new structure that many more people can get involved in, and that a lot of the original people can just say, okay, taking a bit of a back seat, but we will try and avoid that. And I think we have to just be constantly aware of whether that's happening within the groups that we're part of.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think those of us that have been responsible for bringing this strategy today, we have a sense of putting something down, which sounds paradoxical, but we hope we are putting it down in order that it be seen to be picked up again. And in reference to the movement of Black Lives Matter, I'm sure those of you that are already on certain book groups or learning about white privilege or the incredible wealth of literature, resources, anti-racist solidarity programs that are there. The chat is collecting them if you'd like to kind of make notes of those, or are part of book reading clubs or something like that, which can only, one trusts, serve to move what is a key historic moment into systemic change that we talk about wanting to bring about, but can now become hopefully very active anti-racist agents in bringing about that change as well.
Thank you. I didn't want to hijack what we're doing and slapping Black Lives Matter over the top, but I appreciate you talking about that. Thank you. Thank you.
No, this is, if anything, mass societal transformation and learning that we're all responsible for moving through.
Can I add to that for Colin, and also connect it a little bit to a question that I've seen in the chat from Louisa about how the 3 working groups will coordinate with each other. That we're really working towards a transparency here within the movement, and so that any activity that happens within a working group, and yes, I'm going to say words that might make some brains go ugh, but minutes will be taken, which will be up for anyone to see. Which means that even if so, the bubble is always open. We're always really visible about what's happening, and even if one person, for example, and it's really natural, fatigue happens or other commitments happen, it's totally okay to step back. But what the activity that's been going on will be visible for anyone else to then weave in and to pick it up and to connect. And in terms of how the 3 working groups will coordinate with each other, the role of the coordinators of each, they will have a certain role in then so the meetings of the working groups are fortnightly. So in the other fortnightly spaces, the coordinators will meet with each other and the national coordinator and the CIC directors to feed back on what's happening within those working groups, so that everyone's aware of what's happening and then can connect dots and communicate with each other as necessary. So it's an emerging and self-organizing mechanism, which you can either dip into or be really at the heart of. I hope that goes some way into answering your question as well about the bubble continually being open and it not being a bubble at all.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, people might know this, but on the chat, there's a facility. If you go into the chat, there's 3 little buttons, and if you press on that, it records the chat that's been public. It doesn't record anybody's private chats. So if people are scrambling to write down the amazing wealth of information we're being sent, you can just press that and it saves it, and you'll get it in your work documents or something. It'll come up at the end. Here's your chat. So all of those references you'll be able to take with you. And also just to say thank you for doing this. I've been feeling really hopeless and a bit helpless, and I feel reinvigorated and re-energized. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Yes, and in terms of these very Zooms being accessible, that in themselves, there's work to be done there as well, to ensure that they're as accessible as possible. So we've got a few more minutes if there are other questions from anybody or points that they'd just like to make. And then we're going to just be closing and wrapping up in the last few minutes, and we'll finish at 12:30. Otherwise, I might just ask.
Can I say one thing?
Up. Ellie, go ahead.
This is how you've invigorated me. I'm doing an illustration degree, and I'm MA, and I'm doing work with children, but I can't now because obviously they're all not at school. But I've done my first drawing for the longest time whilst I've been listening to you. So this is My Culture Declares emergency garden I've planted whilst we've been doing things. So I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you very much. So I'm looking for some more thumbs up. Oh, I've got some Evgenia from Portugal, and then followed by Victoria.
Sorry, I was just doing the thumbs up because I love the drawing. It looks
Okay.
like a really beautiful biodiverse forest to me, but that's all. Thank you.
So Victoria, were you also doing a thumbs up for
I
that
was just
reason?
showing appreciation.
Okay,
for the
appreciation.
garden.
It's difficult, isn't it? We need a slightly bigger range of reactions here. We're a bit, talk about narrow. Chloe, was that a thumbs up or a question?
That was a thumbs up to say, sorry, it's a question. But just to say there's clearly a few of us from the Southwest on here, and a couple of us just been saying that it'd be great to galvanise the Bristol / Southwest energy and try and pull that together in a distinct way. And I'm really up for that conversation.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So I'm going to ask Victoria, as our national coordinator, if there's anything that occurs to you that would be very good to say at this point, Victoria, before we wrap up the morning.
No, but any questions you can direct to me to culturedeclares@gmail, and I will endeavour to answer them. There was one thing that came up in my little breakout meeting, was people anxious about, at the moment, particularly about the sort of time and this creating additional work. But I think there's one thing, very simple thing, is just to think about how Culture Declares can amplify the work you're already doing simply by using the logo or tagging us in your social media. You know, that's all part of movement building. So just consider that. That's it really. Yeah, really any questions sort of about the meetings, direct them to me at culturedeclares@gmail.
And Victoria, somebody said, can you share the link to sign up to the newsletter? But I think if I'm right, that comes through the website in terms of signing up to Declare. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. If you've declared, you don't automatically get on the newsletter mailing list. So just bear that in mind. You have to declare and sign up to the mailing list. And anyone who hasn't declared, please go and declare.
Yes, do please. And the offer will continue. The offer in June is fortnightly and in July. So the rationale behind having fortnightly working group meeting cycles is that it fits in with that offer being fortnightly as well. So maybe the last link to put here is the link, if anyone could find that and just copy it in again, to Chloe, I think somebody's typing. Could you be on mute whilst you do that, just to be keep our sound open?
It looks like we have another question coming from Deborah.
Yeah, it's not a question, I'm afraid. It's a bit of a statement. I've put it in the chats as well. So one of the things I'm really concerned about is getting outside our bubble, which we've talked about a bit via Colin besides anyone else. But there are politicians on here, and I'm really interested to try and think about how we can infiltrate politics a bit more, but more from an artist perspective rather than, you know, we're not really, at least I'm not a lobbyer, you know, it doesn't suit me to be a lobbyer, but to somehow infiltrate politics. So if the politicians on here could come up with any ideas about how good ways that things that we produce, how we might be able to infiltrate politics.
Julie, do you want to speak to that for literally 1 minute? And I will also say that I know that a letter is being crafted, which CDE declarers will be invited to sign, going to Oliver Dowden. And I think maintaining a strong dialogue with government and politicians is absolutely essential. And also the strategic change making group will keep their eye on where that, you know, where the momentum and dynamic has to be maintained for that. But Julie, very briefly, Julie Ward, who has occupied a political space.
Okay, well, I think that the strategic working group can really take this forward. I think that I'm here as a politician, but also as a poet, a theatre maker, and as somebody who's working with the UK Student Climate Action Network and Educators for Sustainability, and also global and international networks. So I think there's lots of ways to do things. Perhaps the thing I learned best in my 6 years as a member of the European Parliament is that you have to say the same thing over and over and over and over again. You must have a message and make it, and just keep repeating it. And actually you can really change things if you do that. I didn't come from a political background, but I learned how to do it in the 6 years I was an MEP. And with some success in the European sphere.
Okay, Julie, I must close you down there because we've literally got 40
Yeah.
seconds. So thank you. And I just urge you, where it's possible, to look at the working groups to sign up or come back to another offer. Judith Knight had one last point that you like to make.
Just
Judith.
very quickly, we were talking in our working group about joining the dots again, which is one of my passions. And what next this morning and last week? There was a new initiative announced by Dave Mootry from Home and Francis Morris from the Tate and Paulie Constable, lighting designer. Another new initiative about post-COVID arts and environment. And they're looking for people to join up a bit. And so I emailed them this morning before this and said, obviously they signed up already to Culture Declares, but season for change and all those things. I'm just always feeling we just need to be coming together. And I'm not sure how much they were aware of all the other things going on. So I think they're circulating this document so we can send it on. I'll send it on to you lot.
Okay, thank you. I think on that note, I might quote Paul Allen, who always says, the future is dappled in the present. So for us to be joining those dots up to make sure that everything is working together is a good plan. Thank you all very, very, very much for joining us. This has been a tremendous putting down and picking up. So on that note, I wish you well for the rest of your June the 10th. And here the 10th offer ends, but an end is always a beginning. And so we look forward to seeing you all again somewhere soon. Thank you for your energy, your love, your passion, your interest, your care, your concern. It's what we need. Onwards. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. And that document will be sent out to you. So advocate with it, take it on, keep connecting those dots, join a group, get active. See you soon.